Prosperity seemed like it was going to be endless in 1928 when the Chrysler Corporation purchased Dodge and began its DeSoto series. The car was supposed to represent an expansion into the middle price class, forming a bridge between Chrysler and Dodge. However, it wasn't long after the launch of DeSoto in 1928 that the stock market would experience a severe crash in 1929 and the U.S. would fall into the Great Depression. Vehicle sales, not only for DeSoto, but across the entire industry, were down significantly as a result. However, DeSoto made it through the Great Depression and really started ramping in volume after the company dropped its exclusive sales of the Chrysler Airflow models in 1934 and began to sell more conventionally styled cars in the mid and late 30s. DeSotos became relatively attractive automobiles as the 1940s and 1950s progressed, especially the trend-setting 1942 hidden headlight DeSoto, a now extremely rare vehicle to find. As the late 1950s arrived, DeSoto embraced Chrysler Corporation's forward-look styling that permeated its entire lineup, and DeSotos were extremely handsome and attractive. Nonetheless, by 1959, rumors of DeSoto's imminent demise began cropping up and also affected sales. The U.S. economy was again entering a recession in 1959, and DeSoto sales were yet again pinched by the collapsing middle market of the U.S. auto industry. The same was true for Oldsmobile, Buick, and Mercury sales, but the problem was that they had started with higher sales baselines going into this late 1950s recession than DeSoto. It really wasn't much of a surprise then when Chrysler decided to finally sunset DeSoto after the 1961 model year, in which it had sold just around 3,000 vehicles. Yes, that's it, 3,000 vehicles, about a tenth of the sales volume of the 1959 model year. It also didn't help that the Chrysler Corporation was trying to push dealers into spinning off standalone, separate franchise dealerships for Plymouth brand. Prior to this point, many DeSoto dealerships were affiliated with Plymouth dealerships. And so when Chrysler forced the dealers to choose between either having a standalone DeSoto franchise or a Plymouth franchise, naturally they chose the Plymouth franchise given its higher volumes. As DeSoto wound down for the 1961 model year, it was able to throw one last vehicle to the public that it would sell in quite low volume, as previously mentioned, about 3,000 units. There was only one nameless series for the 1961 DeSotos. They were just called that, DeSotos. There was no more Fire Sweep, Fire Flight, or Fire Dome. And the styling was, shall we say, a bit of an acquired taste, especially with the canted headlights, similar to what Chrysler was doing at the same time, or what even Lincoln had done on the 1958 through 60 Continentals and Lincoln lineup. Above the metal crosshatch grille was an open oval area that spelled out DeSoto in block letterings against a fine mesh background. And just behind that mesh background sat one engine that was available for the 1961 model year, the so-called TurboFlash 361 cubic inch V8 that made 265 horsepower and 380 foot-pounds of torque. It only came with a two-barrel carburetor. No optional engines were available in the 1961 model year DeSotos. The cars also employed Chrysler's now well-known unibody construction that had been introduced in the 1957 model year with the forward-look Chryslers. Up front, the suspension system consisted of torsion bars and out back, leaf springs, providing the cars with a very stable, if not firm, ride for the time. Unfortunately, quality wasn't the best in these late 50s, early 60s Chrysler products. In particular, they exhibited some severe rust issues, particularly around the headlight buckets and the tops of the fenders, as the wheel houses didn't go all the way forward within the wheel arches, allowing salt spray and other items to get packed up on top of the fender and up near the headlights. This didn't endear Chrysler to its customers, although some of them did like its certainly quirky by now styling. However, one real gem element of the 1961 DeSotos was its interior, and in particular the instrument cluster was just a masterpiece of artwork. The four-spoke steering wheel, complete with the horn ring that said DeSoto in the middle of it, was just a piece of artwork that still looks like it belongs in a museum today. And the theme of the four-spoke steering wheel, namely that upward twist toward the ends where the center hub met the wheel, was carried over in the upper instrument panel pod, creating a super unique look. As was true with other Chrysler products of the time, the mirror was mounted on the instrument panel and not on the windshield, and it provided a functional, if not strange, placement. Another element of the 1961 DeSoto's interior that some would call strange is the seating, which, again, like other Chrysler products, had this supersized driver's seat, even to the point that the driver's seat had a different cloth pattern in it that was supposed to help the driver with overall seat comfort on longer drives. Not entirely sure why the passengers wouldn't be able to get that, but they didn't. And DeSoto customers could option up their interior and their car in general with a number of items, including the relatively novel for that time air conditioner, heater, and defroster, a push-button radio, even a record player that was made by RCA Victor could be mounted beneath the dash and play 45 RPM records while you drive. Not quite sure how that would do over super bumpy roads, but it was nonetheless an option for the time, which Chrysler claimed you could load with just one hand and would play uninterruptedly through the radio for up to 2 hours. Chrysler also offered a number of power equipment features on these DeSotos, including power steering, where the effort, it bragged, was reduced up to 80%. In other words, you could steer the car with your pinky finger, something that would go out of vogue many decades later, although I must say that I still enjoy the relatively light steering in these vehicles as well as others of the time period. You could also get power brakes, which Chrysler called total contact brakes, and power seats as well as power windows. But I must say that the real star of the show in this interior is that overall instrument panel that is a wonderful melange of sci-fi, futurism, and just overall coolness. To that end, in the left pod on the instrument cluster were the buttons for Chrysler's push-button TorqueFlite transmission, and the knobs beneath this enabled the driver to turn on the headlights, the windshield wipers, adjust the rear view mirror, which was the leftmost joystick control, and there was also a warning light for the parking brake. There were also oil and temperature gauges just above these knobs so that the driver knew what was going on under hood. On the passenger side of the instrument panel were the climate control buttons that a driver could push to make sure that they were traveling in comfort. Beneath those buttons for the climate control were gauges for the fuel level as well as amperage, and beneath that was a placement for the ignition key. To the right of it, the knob for interior lights, and to the right of that, a knob for the cigarette lighter. It was an overall attractive, handsome, futuristic design, especially with that beautiful engine turning around the overall instrument panel face that just really wouldn't be repeated in the years going forward, and that's a shame. This cool instrument cluster died with DeSoto, and the mark kind of went out with a thud. But nonetheless, DeSoto still made a pronounced mark on automotive history. Hope you enjoyed this special feature on the 1961 DeSoto and its interior. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you.